I didn't expect to see him there, the man I once called my husband, standing in the same aisle, holding a tiny blue onesie, his arm wrapped around another woman's waist. My hands froze on the baby blanket I was about to buy. I was 8 months pregnant, my belly heavy beneath my coat, and for a moment, the air in the store felt thick enough to choke on. He looked up. Our eyes met and time stopped. The last time I'd seen him was outside the courthouse 6 months ago, when he swore he never wanted children. He said a baby would ruin his career, that I was too emotional, too needy, too much. And yet here he was, shopping for baby clothes with her. She was younger, pretty, her laughter ringing through the store like a melody that scraped against my heart. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as they strolled closer, chatting about crib colors and baby names, living the life I once begged him to share with me. "Hey," he said awkwardly, pretending to be surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here." I managed a tight smile, though my throat burned. Guess we both had the same idea. His wife's eyes widened as she glanced at my belly. "Oh wow, you're pregnant! Congratulations!" she chirped. He stiffened, and I caught the flicker of panic in his face before he quickly masked it with a grin. "Yeah," I said softly. "About 8 months now." A silence settled between us, sharp enough to cut glass. He cleared his throat, pretending to check a price tag, while she smiled too sweetly. That's when I saw it. The same brand of stroller I had returned 2 months ago after realizing I couldn't afford it alone. He was holding the exact same model, with the same color and accessories I'd chosen before the divorce. My stomach twisted, I turned away, heart trembling. I didn't want him to see me cry. Not him, not her. But fate wasn't done humiliating me. At the checkout counter, our lines met again. I placed a few small items on the conveyor: diapers, a pacifier, a blanket. They had a full cart: crib sheets, bottles, a stroller, everything new and gleaming. The cashier smiled politely as she rang up my things. When she handed me the receipt, I noticed something strange. Printed beneath the total was a loyalty account number and his name. My chest tightened. "Excuse me," I asked the cashier, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why does this say his name?" She blinked, confused. "Oh, that's the account linked to the card you used last month." "Same card, right?" I felt dizzy. He'd told me he canceled all the joint cards, that we were financially separate. He'd lied. He was still using the same shared account, probably because both our names were on it, which meant every purchase he made with her could be traced back to me. My fingers trembled as I clutched the paper, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. He noticed. His smile faltered, the color draining from his face. "Everything okay?" his new wife asked, glancing between us. I forced a smile, folding the receipt tightly in my palm. "Yes," I said. "Everything's finally clear." He swallowed hard, realizing I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. As they walked away, I looked down at the crumpled paper in my hand and whispered to myself, "This isn't over." When I first met him, I thought he was my miracle. I was 28, working long hours as a nurse in the maternity ward. My days were filled with the cries of newborns and the tired smiles of mothers. I used to imagine my own baby one day. Tiny fingers, sleepy eyes, a soft heartbeat against my chest. He walked into my life when I was at my weakest. My mother had just passed away, leaving me with nothing but debt in an old apartment that smelled of lavender and sorrow. He came as a patient's relative. His sister was giving birth. I remember how he thanked me for helping her, how kind his eyes looked, how safe his voice sounded. After that day, he started visiting me. Coffee breaks turned into dinners, dinners into weekends, and within a year we were married. He was everything I thought I wanted: confident, successful, gentle when he wanted to be. But deep down, I ignored the cracks that appeared early on. The way he flinched when I mentioned children. How he changed the subject whenever I talked about saving for the future. How his phone always lay face down on the table. I thought love meant patience. I thought if I tried harder, he'd change. When I told him I was pregnant, I'll never forget his expression. It wasn't joy, it was fear. He didn't even try to hide it. "This isn't the right time," he said that night, pacing like a trapped animal. "We can't afford this. I'm not ready to be a father." I cried for hours, begging him to understand. He didn't shout, he never did, but his silence was worse. A week later, he handed me divorce papers. He said it was for the best. That one day I'd thank him. I was 2 months pregnant, alone, rent overdue, and with no family left. The only thing I had was the baby growing inside me, and the fragile hope that somehow I could build a new life. So, I worked extra shifts. I sold my mother's jewelry. I learned how to fix things around the apartment myself. Every kick from inside my belly reminded me why I had to keep going. But sometimes, late at night, I still wondered what went wrong, how love could disappear like smoke. Until that day in the baby store, when the receipt showed me what my heart refused to see. He hadn't changed. He had just learned to hide better. There were charges on that joint account that made no sense. Payments made months before our divorce. Fancy restaurants, hotel stays, jewelry, all while he told me we couldn't afford to keep the baby. I didn't realize it then, but that receipt wasn't just proof of betrayal, it was a key. A key that would unlock everything he'd been hiding from me. And this time, I wasn't the naive woman who believed his words. This time, I was going to find the truth, no matter how much it hurt. After that day in the baby store, something inside me shifted. The tears didn't come anymore. The pain was still there, buried deep, but it had turned into something sharper, cold, steady, focused. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up crying. I woke up planning. The receipt sat on my kitchen counter, creased from being opened and folded a dozen times. Each line told a story, dates, amounts, places, a map of his lies. I started tracing them one by one. The fancy restaurant charge, a place downtown we used to go on anniversaries. The hotel bookings, all during the same weeks he told me he had business trips. The jewelry purchase, the same month I told him I was pregnant. I could see it now. Him taking her to the places that once belonged to us. While I was home, sick with morning nausea, believing he was working late. It should have destroyed me, but instead, it gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. I decided to visit his company, not to confront him yet, but to confirm one thing, whether his new wife knew the truth. I waited outside the glass building for hours, my hands resting on my belly as people rushed in and out. The fall wind was cold, but it kept me grounded. Then I saw her, the same woman from the store. She carried a box of pastries, smiling as she waved to the receptionist. She didn't look like a villain. She looked innocent. When she came out again, I followed her to the parking lot. "Excuse me?" I said softly. She turned, surprised. "Oh, yes, from the baby store." I forced a polite smile. "Can we talk for a second?" She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in a nearby cafe. I watched her carefully, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the baby, how she touched her belly as if it were her entire world. "He's been amazing," she said. "So supportive." I don't know how I got so lucky. My throat tightened. Lucky. That was exactly what I used to say. Then she said something that made my heart skip. "He told me he never wanted children before me, that he was too focused on work. But when we met, everything changed." A chill ran down my spine. He'd recycled the same lies, just different words, a different woman. I smiled faintly, masking the storm inside me. "That's wonderful," I said. "I'm happy for you." She beamed, unaware of the volcano behind my calm voice. When we stood to leave, I handed her my number. "In case you ever need anything," I said softly. Pregnancy can be unpredictable. She thanked me, not realizing what that gesture truly meant. As I watched her drive away, I pressed my hand over my belly and whispered to my unborn child, "We're not just surviving anymore. We're going to end this." The storm was coming, and this time I'd be the one holding the thunder. 2 days after meeting his new wife, I decided to confront him. Not with anger, not yet. I wanted to see what kind of man he would pretend to be when caught between two lives. I waited until Friday afternoon, when I knew he'd be leaving work. The parking lot was quiet, painted gold by the setting sun. When he saw me leaning against my car, his smile faltered. "What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "You shouldn't be here." "Relax," I said, forcing calm. "I just came to talk," he sighed, glancing around nervously. "You can't just show up like this. My wife doesn't know everything." "I know," I interrupted. "But maybe she should." His eyes darkened. "Are you threatening me?" I smiled faintly. "No, just returning the courtesy you once gave me when you left me alone, pregnant with nothing." He rubbed the back of his neck, frustrated. "You know it wasn't like that. I told you I wasn't ready." "We weren't ready." My voice cracked slightly. "Then why are you ready now with her?" He didn't answer. His silence was heavier than words. When I pulled the folded receipt from my purse, the color drained from his face. "You remember this?" I asked. "Your loyalty account? The same one you told me you closed after the divorce?" He tried to snatch it from me, but I stepped back. "You used our joint account to buy her things," I said, my voice trembling with quiet fury. "The same card that paid for our groceries?" "My hospital bills, the rent, was the one he used to wine and dine her," he exhaled sharply. "You're overreacting." "It's just money." That sentence shattered something inside me. "Just money?" I whispered. "You left me when I was 2 months pregnant because you said we couldn't afford a baby. And now you call it just money?" He looked away, his jaw tight. Then he made the mistake of reaching out to touch my arm. "You need to calm down," he said softly. "This stress isn't good for the baby." I stepped back like his touch burned. "Don't you dare pretend to care." His calm expression cracked. For the first time, I saw the truth behind the mask, the selfishness, the arrogance, the fear of losing control. "You always do this," he snapped. "Play the victim, make everything my fault." I almost laughed. "You made it my fault for loving you, for believing in us." He ran a hand through his hair, glancing toward the road. "Look, I can't deal with this right now. I have a meeting." "Sure you do," I said coldly. "Just like all those meetings in hotel rooms." His head whipped toward me, his lips parting, but no words came out. That was all the confirmation I needed. I opened my car door and slid in, my heart pounding. Before driving off, I rolled down the window and said quietly, "You may think you've moved on, but some debts don't disappear with a signature." As I drove away, my hands shook on the steering wheel, not from fear but from awakening. Because behind that mask of confidence, I'd seen something in his eyes I'd never noticed before. Panic. And that meant he was hiding more than money, something bigger. Something I was going to uncover piece by piece. A week after the confrontation, I thought things had calmed down. I was wrong. It started with an invitation, his new wife's baby shower. I almost laughed when I saw the pastel envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a note written in perfect cursive. "We'd love to see you there. You were so kind at the store, and it would mean a lot to have your support." Support? The word stung. I told myself to ignore it, but something inside whispered, "Go." Maybe I needed to see how far he'd go to keep up his perfect image. Maybe I wanted closure. The event was held at a high-end country club. All glass walls and white roses, tables overflowing with gifts, pink and gold balloons drifting toward the ceiling. I walked in quietly, wearing a simple dress that barely fit my round belly. For a moment, no one noticed me. I stood near the back, watching them laugh, his arm around her, a photographer snapping pictures. He looked happy, too happy. Then she spotted me. Her face lit up. "You came," she said, rushing over. "I'm so glad," I forced a smile. "Congratulations." She led me closer to the crowd. "Everyone, this is the sweet woman I told you about, the one who helped me at the baby store." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I felt exposed, out of place, like I had stepped into someone else's dream. Then, from across the room, I saw him, frozen, pale. His smile vanished the instant he recognized me. He whispered something to his wife, but she was already chatting with a group of women, proudly showing off gifts. One of them laughed and said loudly, "You're lucky. He said he never wanted kids before he met you." The words echoed through the room. Heads turned. Whispers started. My pulse quickened. I took a deep breath and said softly, "That's not true." The laughter died. Every eye turned to me. "I'm sorry," I continued, my voice trembling. "But he said those exact same words to me before he left me when I was pregnant." The room went silent. Even the music stopped. His wife's smile faded. "What?" she whispered. He stepped forward quickly, trying to regain control. "That's enough," he hissed. "You're misunderstanding." But I wasn't done. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded receipt, smoothing it on the table. "This was printed under your account," I said quietly. "You bought these things with the card you promised to cancel after the divorce." Gasps rippled through the crowd. His wife picked up the paper with shaking hands. "Is this true?" He stammered. "It's complicated." "No," I said firmly. "It's actually very simple." Her face crumpled. The crowd murmured, phones raised, recording every second. His glare turned venomous, his mask cracking completely. "You planned this," he spat. I met his eyes. "No, you did, when you lied to both of us." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the balloons trembled. His wife began to cry, and people whispered her name in pity. I stood there trembling, my baby pressing gently against my ribs, reminding me to breathe. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was release. The truth was finally out, and he could never bury it again. But as I turned to leave, one of the women stopped me. "You should know," she whispered. "He didn't just lie about money. He used your name for one of his business loans." My heart froze. The real damage, it seemed, had only just begun. I thought the worst was over after the baby shower, but a week later, the real storm hit. It began with a phone call. "Mrs. Hart?" a man's voice said politely. "This is Bridgeview Bank. We've been trying to reach you about your overdue business loan." "Business loan?" I frowned. There must be some mistake. "I don't own a business." There was a pause, papers rustling faintly on the other end. "It's under your name," he said slowly. "A $75,000 loan approved last year, signed by both you and your husband." My breath caught. "That's impossible. We divorced months ago." "Ma'am," he said gently, "the documents show your signature." I hung up before he could continue. My hands shook as I dug through my old files. There it was. The copy of our joint financial documents, the ones he promised to handle. I hadn't seen the originals since I signed the divorce papers. Now I understood why. He hadn't just lied to me. He'd forged my name. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows on the walls, the receipt still pinned under my mug like a silent witness. My baby kicked gently, reminding me I couldn't fall apart. Not now. But the weight of it all pressed down on me. Every memory, every touch, every promise turned to poison. All I had left were debts, betrayal, and a child on the way. The next morning, I went to the bank. The clerk confirmed everything. "The signatures match," she said. "The loan is tied to his company. If it defaults, both names are liable." My knees nearly gave out. Outside, I leaned against the cold stone wall, trying to breathe as strangers passed without a glance. I realized how invisible I'd become. Just another woman broken by a man who never paid for anything he did. For days, I ignored every call. The stress sent sharp pain through my lower back. I feared for the baby, but the dread deepened when I opened my mailbox. A debt collection notice. I sank to the floor, tears spilling silently as I whispered to my unborn child, "I'm so sorry. Mommy's trying." But even through the tears, something stirred inside me again. The same spark that had kept me alive after he left. He forged my name. He committed fraud. And I still had the proof. The receipts, the records, the dates. That was when I knew what I had to do. I called Clara, an old friend from the hospital's billing department. Her husband was a lawyer. When I told her everything, she went quiet for a long moment, then said, "You have enough to destroy him. But be careful. If he's desperate, he'll fight dirty. I'm done being scared, I said, gripping the phone. That night, I printed every document I had and stacked them neatly in a folder. My armor. For months I'd been running from pain. Now I was turning it into a weapon. The lawyer's office smelled of old wood and quiet power. I sat across from Clara's husband, Mr. Jennings, my hands resting protectively on my belly as he flipped through the papers. "You have enough to open a case," he said finally. "Forgery, financial fraud, identity theft. But you'll need solid proof of intent, not just receipts." "I can get it," I said quickly. "He still works at the same company. There must be files, transfers, something." He nodded. "Be careful. Men like him don't crumble quietly." When I stepped outside, the wind felt different, sharp, electric, almost clean. For months I'd lived in fear. Now I felt power hum beneath my skin. I started digging. Every evening after work, I sat at my kitchen table, tracing bank records, checking purchases, contacting credit bureaus, saving every email. Then, one afternoon, a message appeared from an unknown number. "I think we need to talk. It's about him." The sender's name made my heart skip. His new wife. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the same one where we'd first crossed paths weeks earlier. She looked different now, her eyes red, her voice trembling. "I didn't know who else to call," she said. "Everything you said was true. I saw his emails, the fake signatures, even the receipts." She slid a small flash drive across the table. "I copied everything before he locked me out of his laptop." I stared at it, hardly breathing. "You have evidence?" She nodded. "And I think he's hiding money offshore. There's an account under your name. He said it was for tax reasons, but I didn't believe him." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" Her lips trembled. "Because I'm pregnant too, and I refuse to raise my child with a man who builds his life on lies." For a moment, I could only stare at her, the woman who'd once been my rival, now sitting across from me. Broken, but brave. "Thank you," I whispered. She shook her head. "Don't thank me. Just make sure he can't hurt anyone else." We spent hours going through what she had. There were screenshots of transactions, emails showing fake signatures, and scanned documents where my name appeared as co-owner of his business, forged again and again. That night when I got home, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen filled with folders, each one another nail in his coffin. I printed the key files and added them to my growing stack of evidence. But as I was labeling one of the folders, I noticed a strange email thread. It wasn't about money, it was about insurance. Specifically, a life insurance policy worth $500,000 under my name, with him listed as the sole beneficiary. My stomach dropped. He had taken out the policy before the divorce, back when I was still his wife, and never canceled it. A chill spread through me as realization hit. He hadn't just wanted to use me financially, he might have wanted me gone. I pressed a hand over my belly and whispered shakily, "He's more dangerous than I thought." But fear didn't control me anymore. I had the truth now, and I had an ally. The next morning I called Mr. Jennings. "I have something new," I said, "and this time it's going to end him." When I met him again, he studied the insurance files in silence for a long time, brow furrowed. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm but grave. "This isn't just fraud," he said. "If what you're saying is true, this could be a federal crime. That life insurance policy could qualify as attempted exploitation, or worse." That last word hung in the air. Worse. My chest tightened. "You mean he could have—" Mr. Jennings nodded slowly. "It's possible he wanted to profit if something happened to you." I pressed my hand to my stomach, feeling my baby move beneath my palm. "He won't win this time," I whispered. Jennings leaned forward. "Then we need to act before he disappears. I can file for a financial freeze, but you'll need to provide a sworn statement and confirm his business details." That night, I stayed up compiling everything: bank statements, receipts, forged signatures, and all the USB data. Each page reopened an old wound, but I didn't stop until dawnlight filled the room. By morning, I was running on adrenaline and coffee. Clara came over to help print duplicates. "You sure you're okay?" she asked softly. I smiled weakly. "No, but I'm ready." We took the files to Jennings's office. He called a contact at the state prosecutor's office and arranged an emergency review. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You should stop digging before you regret it." I froze. The sender's initials matched his company's email format. My blood ran cold. He knew. Jennings glanced at the message and said calmly, "Good. That means he's scared. Keep everything." Don't reply. 2 days later, Jennings called with news. The bank had confirmed multiple forged authorizations. "We've got a case strong enough for a warrant," he said. Air finally filled my lungs. For months I'd been drowning, and now I was surfacing. But the relief didn't last. That evening, another message came. This time from his wife. "He's moving money tonight. Offshore account." I found the transfer notice. Panic surged. If he succeeded, everything he stole would vanish beyond reach. I called Jennings immediately. "He's trying to escape." "Send me the details," he said sharply. "I'll contact the district attorney." I forwarded everything. Minutes later, he called back. "We can stop the transfer, but we need physical proof of his authorization. Do you know where his office is?" I hesitated. I did. I'd been there once, years ago. And suddenly, a plan formed in my mind. "I'll get it," I said quietly. "Don't do anything reckless," he warned. But I was already grabbing my coat. It was nearly midnight when I pulled up outside his office building. The parking lot was dark and empty, except for one car I recognized instantly. His. Through the glass doors, I saw him inside, typing furiously on his computer, a half-packed bag on the desk. I pulled out my phone and began recording through the window. The glow of his screen reflecting off the glass, his banking dashboard open, the transfer confirmation visible. Then he turned. Our eyes met. He froze. I held up my phone, camera still rolling, and said through the glass, "Game over." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not guilt, but panic. And that's when I knew the hunter had finally become the prey. The night I recorded him felt like the end, but it was only the beginning of something greater. 2 weeks later, I went into labor, alone in the quiet of my apartment. I called Clara between contractions, barely able to breathe. She stayed on the phone until the ambulance arrived. Hours later, my daughter came into the world, small, pink, and fierce, her cry echoing like victory. When they placed her on my chest, I wept, not from pain, but from release. She was my reason for everything. The days that followed blurred into sleepless nights and soft lullabies. But in the middle of that chaos, the world outside was shifting. One morning, while I was feeding the baby, Mr. Jennings called. "We did it," he said, his voice brighter than I'd ever heard it. The prosecutor filed charges: forgery, fraud, and attempted identity theft. His accounts are frozen. "He can't leave the country." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. It wasn't over yet, but justice had finally taken its first breath. Weeks passed as I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The hospital offered me a part-time position so I could stay close to my baby. Clara helped me redecorate the apartment, soft yellow curtains, new plants by the window, sunlight where there used to be shadows. One morning, as I caught my reflection in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Gone was the pale, frightened version of me who cried over broken promises. My hair was shorter, my posture stronger, my eyes steady. There was strength now where pain used to live. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the author of my story. News traveled fast. His company was audited. Multiple irregularities surfaced, employees questioned. The press caught wind of it. His name splashed across headlines beside words like fraud and embezzlement. I didn't have to say a thing. The world was already watching him burn. One evening, while rocking my daughter to sleep, I received a message from his wife. "He's been suspended. They seized his office. He's panicking." I typed back, "Don't worry. It's almost over." That night, I opened my old journal, the one I'd written in during the darkest days of my pregnancy. The first page still read, "I will survive this." I smiled and added a new line beneath it, "And I will rise from it." The following week, Jennings asked me to appear at a preliminary hearing. He wanted the judge to see the human cost behind the crime, not just the numbers. When I walked into that courthouse with my baby in my arms, every eye turned toward me. I held my head high. I wore a simple cream dress, no jewelry. I didn't need decoration. My piece was enough. He was there too. Pale, unshaven, his once perfect suit wrinkled. The man who used to command every room now couldn't even meet my eyes. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I looked at my daughter sleeping against my shoulder and remembered every night I cried alone because of him. The pity vanished. The judge set a date for the full trial. Outside, reporters waited, microphones pointed. One of them called my name, asking if I had anything to say. I turned to the cameras, smiled gently, and said, "Truth doesn't need revenge. It reveals itself." But deep down, I knew the final reckoning was still ahead. The day of the trial arrived beneath a gray, quiet sky. I woke early, dressed my daughter carefully, and looked at myself in the mirror one last time. There was no fear left in my reflection, only calm. At the courthouse, the air buzzed with reporters and flashing cameras. Inside, the room was full. Former co-workers of his, investigators, even the woman he once called his wife, sitting nervously in the back. When he entered, escorted by 2 officers, whispers followed him like a shadow. He looked smaller now, older, like the lies had finally eaten him from the inside out. The judge began the hearing. Mr. Jennings presented the evidence, every forged document, bank transfer, fake signature, and the video I'd recorded through his office window. Each piece of proof landed like a hammer. I watched his face shift, from arrogance to panic, from denial to silence. Then it was my turn. Jennings called me to the stand. My legs trembled as I stood, but when I looked down at my daughter sleeping in her stroller, I found my strength. I told them everything, from the day he walked out on me to the moment I found that receipt that changed everything. My voice didn't waver once. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned back, eyes heavy with something that looked almost like pity. His lawyer tried to argue it was all a misunderstanding, but it was far too late. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the final blow. The prosecutor revealed the life insurance policy he had secretly taken out in my name, and the room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. His wife gasped aloud. For a brief moment, he looked straight at me. There was no apology in his eyes, only defeat. The judge's verdict was clear. Guilty on all counts. Sentence, 7 years in. Federal prison, restitution, and full repayment of all forged loans plus damages for emotional distress. The gavel struck the desk with a sharp crack. It was over. As officers led him away, he turned once and muttered, "You ruined me." I met his eyes and said softly, "No, you did that yourself." Outside, the world felt brighter, even under the gray sky. Reporters surrounded me, but I only said one thing.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.